Greetings, all lovely people, and good morning to those who are just waking up, and good evening to those who are currently in the nighttime, and anywhere in between for all the others. Welcome to my channel. I'm glad you stopped by. Today we're going to be reading a couple of Reddit stories while playing some competitive Pokemon, specifically laddering national decks with a team. This can be played in the background while you're working or anything, or just while you're eating, or if you just want to maybe pick up some competitive Pokemon tips whilst listening to a cool story that I found on Reddit, you're welcome to stay. So, our first story is going to be by For the Better Good on r/scary stories, and it's titled People's Stuff is Going Missing. I think we're next. You know how sometimes your keys just vanish? Like you set them on the counter in front of the microwave to look for your sunglasses on the way out the door, and when you give up your search and decide to leave, you check in front of the microwave to find the keys aren't there anymore. You're already late, so you exasperatedly go back to tearing everything apart because you can't leave without your keys. You could fill that feeling in with anything, really. Keys, wallet, TV remote, earbuds, phone, pencil, pen, shoes. That toy you used to play with all the time when you were younger, but one day it fell behind your dresser, and by the time you found it back there, all crumpled and covered in dust, you already just kinda outgrown it. You don't think about them that much, but all those things accumulate over a lifetime, and so does that nagging feeling of half recollected loss. All those things that go missing have one thing in common. One day, you're gonna stop in the middle of the hustle and bustle of life to take a breather, and you're gonna think to yourself, aren't I forgetting something? But the feeling slips away just as quickly as it came, like a breeze. Then that faded memory stays relevant until the day you remember why you needed that thing so badly in the first place. It all started, I think, on Christmas 2 years ago? 2024, maybe? The thing about it was, it crept up on us. By the time we realized what was going on, we'd already gotten used to it. Numb. Conditioned. Everyone has their own stories about when and how they caught on. For me, it was my playing card collection. The thing that was really got my goat was that I knew for a fact that I put it in the box right where I've always kept it, in my closet, between the books and my cat's decorative outfits. When I told my family, a look of confusion on my face, my brothers just laughed at me and called me a premolar-shaped freak, saying I should be more careful when I show off my collection. Looking back, I can't believe how much of a non-issue it was at the time, but none of us had any idea back then. Why would we have reacted any differently? After opening presents, I called my best friend, Winks, to exchange holiday tea. He told me about his Uncle George, who had gone off on some drunken rant about immigrants and 5G. In return, I told him about my younger cousin, Jebin, who had gotten publicly flogged over a brunch by his wino mom when she found a text he'd received detailing how he'd convinced a kid at his school to try bone smashing in an attempt to strengthen his jawline. Geez, the kids are really effed, aren't they? Winks groaned, and I could hear the sound of wrapping paper rustling in the background. If that clavicular dude is anything to go off of, yeah, absolutely, I snickered, using a pen to scribble random shapes in a free space of my notebook. Bruh, my aunt would have a gator if she looked through Jevons Kick subscriptions. Honestly, dude's lucky she only checked the text. Oh, dude, Winks agreed. If my mom read my search history at a family gathering when I was his age, we would collectively agreed to have me committed. I snorted. Really? Absolutely, dude, without a doubt. Ugh, you guys are disgusting. As someone whose job is to clean up women's bathrooms, you guys are no better than us, so don't go getting all precious. Uh-huh. I paused, doodling some shitty little critter, just to roll my eyes. Yeah, okay, Wings, I'll have you know, women are very organized. Yeah, I'll bet all your filthy yaoi hentai is lined up in alphabetical order, huh? Winks asked, and I could hear the smirk in his voice. Hey, don't you talk about my yaoi. And yes it is, A through Z. He started making retching noises, which had me in the stitches. Yeah, organized and neat and nice, right next to the cat clothes, and the sudden recollection jolted me into reality. The damn playing cards, including several really sick sets. Damn. Oh, crap, I forgot, Wings shouted, peeking his mic and making my headphones crackle obnoxiously. Ow, for F's sake, Wings. That's ear violation, dude. My hand instinctively jerked to my ears. Sorry. You just made me remember, he muttered, and I could hear more crunching and crinkling, like he was shifting through paper. What's up? I asked, still drawing mindlessly. I got this. Crap, I'm sorry. His voice was different now, more perplexed. Damn, nope, I had no idea where it went. F me, dude. I stopped drawing, my fingers tensing. What? I can't hear you through all the mumbling, dog. Winks let out a pouty huff. You mentioned your heartless little icon strip, right? Huh? The cat's closed. The one you keep in the closet, remember? Well, that made me remember. Cujo got a handsome two-piece tux from Meemaw today. At the mention of Wink's yellow lab puppy, Cujo, my grip on the pen loosened. Oh, that sounds cute, I responded. Yeah, it was, Winks whined indignantly. It was like baby blue, and I was gonna send you a picture, but I didn't even get a chance because I lost it. My eyes drifted from the notebook on my desk to my closet door. Damn, really? Yeah, I didn't even put him on him either. I literally just set it on the floor next to the couch. One minute it was there, the next, nothing. I stared at my closet for a moment. Yeah, dude, that's weird. Sucks balls, crazy style, was all I could say. As weird as it would have sounded to say back then, that was the exact moment everything started to feel off. Oh, well, I probably just forgot where I put it, and it got buried under some wrapping paper, he said, resigned. I just gotta find it before I go on home after break, or Mom will have to ship it to me, and I know that old bag's gonna make me pay for it. It's gotta turn up at some point, right? Well, it's got to. My voice broke. It didn't just grow legs and walk away. No idiot woman. We yapped for another 30 minutes. Winks didn't hang up before making another crude joke about my mother, and I didn't let him off the hook before making another joke about the time he stole one of the manga from my yaoi collection. Eventually, we told each other to F off, and that was that. I closed my notebook, but when I went to put the pen back in my makeshift pen holder, a red solo cup decorated with press-on rhinestones and glitter, I found that it was gone. Normally, it sat to the left of my laptop, with an assortment of markers, pens, and pencils, but all of a sudden it just wasn't there anymore. I checked on the floor, looked around, even opened my drawer to see if I'd hid it from myself by accident. Alas, I had seemingly just evaporated. As I pushed the lump down my throat, I was ready to brush off my forgetfulness and move on, but if it had stopped there, I wouldn't have had a reason to keep going. Over the coming days, many such cases began to make themselves known. At first, I think a lot of us were in denial. Little things were getting lost all over the place. Things like silverware, batteries, spare change, screws, tiny details adding up to various degrees of incorrectness. Some details were smaller than others, though on New Year's Day 2025, a handful of museums across the globe reported several of their exhibits going missing. Valuable geode collections, some archaeological discoveries, several small art displays, thrift shops across the nation were losing inventory by the truckloads. Just weird inconsistencies. A lens popped out of my mom's glasses, a small oval that she'd been swearing for months would get fixed soon. The day she was supposed to get it sent for repair, it was gone. She went on a mini rampage through the house, really flipping everything upside down for this tiny little hunk of glass. The thing that really sent her over the edge was that trusty flashlight she had kept on her keychain, had also gone missing. She discovered its absence when she went down under her bed to look for her lens, and had no light to shine in the dark. That was not a good day to live under my parents' roof. I wouldn't say we feared for our lives, but between me and my two brothers, let's just say we were all trying to convince each other to give Mom her shit back. God rest their souls, but lo and behold, none of us had taken anything and had no way to return the misplaced items. With nothing to satiate our enraged mother, we just had to bear her wrath. I will say that experience had nothing on Dad's reaction when his Air Jordans went missing. But luckily, I was back in my dorm by then. Unfortunately, had more than enough on my own plate to stay busy. My first round of lessons post break were officially being assigned, but I found more and more of my equipment was going missing. Nearly half of my erasers, a handful of phone chargers, several pairs of lab-safe shoes were missing their partners, and most inexplicably of my only good whisk. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a good whisk as a broke college student? Fresh off a family gathering splurge, no less. By the end of January, I think a lot of us could tell something was up. I mean, I even noticed mentions and hints of my teachers, classmates, and coworkers' things going missing. A marker cap here, a soap dispenser there, the rag I used to clean the oven at work with. There was more stuff, and it had become so regular I just started forgetting. Denial is a strong mindset, easier for some to slip into than others. But by February of 2025, the first round of social media posts were beginning to hit our For You page. When we would refresh, and I was teetering on the edge of a steep incline that was threatening to devour me. Have you ever heard of the term schizoposting? The best way I can describe it is when you see a clearly mentally unwell person sharing their scattered thoughts online, usually barely filtered. It can be some conspiracies, maybe an AI-generated picture with a whack, hyper-specific caption, or a very detailed personal account that feels more like it belongs in a private diary than a public chat under a Facebook name. That schizo posting really sneaks up. At first, you don't see it, but most algorithms don't push that kind of stuff because it's not relatable enough for the average person. It's usually just an unhealthy echo chamber of sick people feeding off of sick people who can't tell what's real or not. It's too niche. You have to dig up to find these instances in edgy corners of specific black-pilled communities. But then, occasionally, a homegrown schizo appears to make their mark where it matters. An absolutely unhinged take gets replied first under a popular hashtag. Their reply is just relatable enough to just tip enough people that it really blows up and gains traction. Then, much like a zip popping on the tip of your nose, it becomes unavoidable and ugly. Before you know it, the Jews invented Bluey to make gentle parenting mainstream and compromise our future soldiers becomes a statement, an ideal, backed by a silent group of keyboard warriors who are waiting for their unpopular opinion to become mainstream enough to open up about. Now a single crazy person's exposition dump becomes a whole political topic amongst a subgroup of a subgroup that becomes meme in a related circle jerk subgroup before fading into irrelevance within a week, and so goes on the chronically online cycle of mental illness that is schizoposting. That's really what it reminded me of in the early days. I felt like I was going mad, and every time I saw a post with 3 likes asking that glaring question, I would just scroll away, telling myself that they were insane and I was looking into it too much. Denial's a hell of a coping strat, what can I say? This had become the norm. Then the more popular personalities began echoing the sentiment, and I had to admit to myself that I wasn't just a forgetful ditz. For a brief, blissful period right on before the spring of 2025, it felt more like a question than a confirmation. Am I crazy, or is everyone else's shit going missing? First, it was Rob Snyder. Then it was AI Gore, followed by Rihanna, then Taylor Swift, Elon Musk, Tom Holland and Zendaya, Markiplier, Measure, Taylor Green, Moist Critical, Kamala Harris, Seth MacFarlane, Adam Sandler, Alex Jones, August the Duck, you name it, they were talking about it. Even though more and more celebrities were talking, it didn't really begin to sink in just how real it was for me until early May, when Zelensky and Trump both agreed in a press conference that the name plaques in their respective offices had vanished within just a few weeks of each other. The only two countries that stayed quiet on the subject were North Korea and Russia. But like, come on, do they really count? That was when we collectively recognized something was up. When a society has a unifying experience, it's novel at first, a concept that everyone can find relatable and interesting. It grips a lot of people, but as with everything else, the planet keeps spinning and we keep going. Work doesn't stop, school doesn't stop. That was until it did, until it had to. Somewhere between all of us coming to and the novelty wearing off, something shifted. A sort of electricity in the air. It was a palpable tension. Different people say different things. Some say it was probably always been the case and we just didn't notice. Some say it's nothing more than a natural progression. But what's natural about it? Nothing like this has ever happened, and we have nothing to compare it to. Personally, I just call it a clear escalation in response to our species agreement. I think it's a show of dominance. But again, I have nothing to base it on, just a speculation. Bigger items began to disappear, more complex things, bikes, refrigerators, furniture, and it didn't show any sign of slowing down. I lost 2 good dining room chairs within 3 weeks. By now, it was early summer, and rather than publicly spending any time looking into the cause of disappearances, a majority of the world's leaders just told us all to keep going. Business as usual, to go forward and not look back. Some folks thought it was aliens, some thought it was a deity. Whatever the cause, it seemed to be dialing a little while staying random with no clear motive. An AI data center near me shut down on June 11th. Me and some buddies wanted to have a get together to celebrate, but the victory felt small and hollow as soon as we saw the news of the last 3 days. Tons of flight delays, as well as a handful of plane crashes, reports of trains going off rails, causing major accidents. Refineries and factories worldwide were indefinitely pausing production for safety inspections, and a coastal city in the UK had been engulfed in a thick black smog due to an offshore rig malfunction, resulting in a meltdown and a massive oil spill that was burning a significant area of the Atlantic Ocean. 3,000 casualties and counting. F's sakes, Hook said, staring at the bar TV as he took a sip of his IPA. Bad night to take shrooms before an idling, eh? Me and our other 2 companions gave him a wary look. "'Kay, message received. I'ma hit the shelter, then one of y'all gotta take me home, 'cause I'm definitely gonna have a bad trip tonight," he said, grabbing his basket of onion rings as he drunkenly hobbled to the men's room. "Is he—" one of my friends, Phil, started to say, watching Winks carry his finger food into the bathroom. "Munchies?" I hazarded a guess. "Okay, I guess so," Phil sighed. Still shocked by the news, I looked down into my glass of Sprite and Tito's, only to see it had disappeared, cup and all. "Aw, F me. I didn't even get a sip." "Aw, damn, Jane. Want some of mine?" my buddy Sarah asked, offering me some of her Irish whiskey. "Oh, no thanks. I'm good," I said, waving her off. Truthfully, I wanted to drink badly, but due to my overdraft credit card, I resigned to dip into the fireball supply hidden under my bed at home. "Well," Phil said, looking at his wristwatch, "good riddance to Morris Coral Center, I guess." Phil lifted his drink in toast, and Sarah messily joined him, her Irish whiskey spilling a few drops that landed on the wooden bar. "Yeah, good effing riddance," Sarah slurred. "Maybe now our tap water will smell like water again instead of poo." Uh, Sarah, Phil asked, "what does water smell like?" Sarah took a minute to ponder before confidently wagering, "I don't know. Not like poo." Phil looked at me, and somehow I knew he was gonna ask, "You hear why it shut down?" We held eye contact. "No." He leaned in, lowering his voice. "Buddy of mine's the janitor there, right? Says it's like a ghost town normally, 'cause so few people work there," Phil says, watching Sarah take big swigs out of her big glass. Yeah, all those jobs, right?" I fake giggle, trying to reapply some levity to the night. "Yeah," Phil chuckled, matching my energy. "Jobs galore for all us plebeians. Anyhow, my buddy's sweeping out one of the server rooms, and he hears the sound, right? Like a motor grinding." "A motor grinding? Ain't those big air servers supposed to be like, gee, real quiet?" "I don't know, man. I do camera lenses, not computers," Phil says, putting his hands up in faux defense. "But from what he said, grinding noise is no good. Very bad." Phil looks around and leans in closer. He goes to investigate, right? And he says, A huge rack of those servers are just. Phil leans back, balls up his hands before unfolding and spreading out all of his 10 fingers, making a poof motion with them. They exploded? I asked, half joking. No, what? What? No! Phil shook his head and did the motion with his hands again. Poof! Disappeared, gone. Nothing. Not like something had haphazardly reached him and grabbed them, though more like this chunk had been expertly removed by. Phil took another sip of his drink. Someone who knows how to perfectly remove a bunch of important servers, I guess. Apparently, a ton of buildings looked like that, as if a worm was eating its way through an apple. As if that's not weird enough, their sensors said it had happened all at once. We both watched Sarah try to balance the fork on a rim of her glass using a toothpick. That's why they shut down. Pretty crazy, huh? I didn't say anything, and luckily I didn't have to. Just then, Winks returned to his seat, pupils dilated, much bigger than they had been when he left. Hey, bud, you good? Phil asked. Winks. Yeah, Winks said. Make it to the bathroom all normal? Phil followed up. Yeah, everything goes smoothly in there. This time, Winks rotated his whole body to face Phil rather than just turning his head. Yeah. Phil looked up at me and stood up. Alright then, guess I'll take Winks back to his place. Get a ride home, dude? He asked me. Yeah, I got an Uber. Sarah grumbled nearly incoherently, her flat face against the bar countertop. Cool. Thanks, Sarah, Phil said, pointing at her and waving $15 to an understanding bartender. I'll be fine. Thanks, Phil. I smile. Okay, sounds good. See you at school tomorrow. Come on, Winks, let's get out of here, Phil said, putting a hand on Winks' shoulder. Whose hand is this? Winks asked. That's my hand, bud, Phil said emphatically. Feels like a weird hand to me, man, Winks muttered. I didn't even know what that's supposed to mean, Winks. As I watched the boys leave, I had a sinking feeling in my gut. At the time, I couldn't verbalize what I was afraid of, but now I know I was right to be afraid. That night, on my way home, I got a call from my mom. She said she was calling to update me on Jebin's broken leg. Apparently, the metal hardware installed in his bones had vanished, so he had to get another leg surgery. She was also curious if I've seen the news, and I told her I had. I said it worried me, and she said not to worry, that things like this happen. I implied that nothing like this has ever happened before in human history, but she kinda just shussed me. Alas, the woman thinks that just because she's lived through 9/11 and the 2009 housing crisis, she's seen it all. She told me not to worry, but by her tone, I felt as though she might be the one worrying more than she was letting on, maybe even more than me. When you're a kid, it always seems like your parents have everything under control. When you're an adult, you get better at picking up on how just little control they have over everything. We ended the call when I got home. Since it was late, I wanted to have 3 fireball whiskey shots and call it a night. But when I looked under my bed, I found all of my alcohol had miraculously disappeared. Angrily, I pulled out my phone to message Winks, and seeing an inbox labeled emergency from 2 hours ago made me hesitate. I opened it to find that my morning classes would be momentarily paused because my college's chemistry lab had simply disappeared, leaving a blank, empty cavity with a classroom doorway. Then unexpectedly, Winks called me first. Yo, I asked. What's up? Winks asked from the other end of the line. Hey man, you good? He was silent for a moment. Yeah, I'm fine. How about you? He finally asked. Yeah, Winks. I'm alright. You do know you called me, right? Oh, did I? Yeah. Christ, sorry, Jane. I didn't mean to. No, you're all good, Winks. Actually, I was about to ask if you remember where you hid those edibles in there. It took a moment to ponder my question while I surveyed the inside of my dorm. They should be in your bookshelf in a plastic container with a twist top, behind your yaoi collection. I walked to my bookshelf and began scanning the manga. Then I saw a gap between two books. One of the entries in the series was missing, and sure enough, through the gap I could see a small white container with the THC warning label. Found it. Thanks, Winks. Don't sweat it, Jane. I popped a cap and took 2 of the small caramels. Good thing I'm sleeping in tomorrow. I have no classes in the morning. Damn, really? I thought you had a lab with Phil till 9:15. Nope. The room, I trailed off, unsure how to finish this thought, but Winks understood. Wow, really? The whole room? He asked incredulously. Mm-hmm. No effing way, he whispered in awe. Yep. Wow. That's... Whole room. Did all the stuff in it disappear too? Yep. It's crazy, but I feel like we're watching our future just sort of, I don't know, vanish. Gone. Like it was never there. Yeah. Preaching to the choir, Winks laughed humorously. We both sat in silence for a few moments, while I felt my heartbeat thrum behind my eyes. You know, you got feel pretty good earlier when you went to the bathroom with those onion rings, I mumbled. Can I say something? Winks blurted. Oh, sure. Sorry, Jane. I wasn't trying to. No, you're fine. You sure? Yeah. He took a deep breath. Look, I don't want to be a... He started before shakily taking a breath in. I mean, a couple planes are reportedly still missing, and no one knows if they crashed or just... I fiddled with the label of the edible container. Look, what happened with your lab? I don't know what happens if you're inside of one of those places, you know? I didn't respond, but I knew what he meant. Yeah. It's weird, right? 2 days ago, big shit started disappearing too, right? It's like, whatever, it's moved off a notch, he said. I know. And no one wants to talk about it seriously, unless it's for a joke or something. Everyone just wants to... Winks continued, the passion in his voice swelling. I don't know, make us sound crazy for talking about it. You know how my vacuum went missing? Yeah, I do, Winks. Well, I brought it up to Uncle George, and all he wanted to talk about was the damn immigrants again, and how this is all some distraction, and I'm over here like, Uncle George, dude, I'm telling you that within a day it went from socks to vacuum cleaners, and you're more focused on the Mexicans. I chuckled. It sounds like George. Ming tried to laugh, but it came out more like a strangled sigh. I don't know, man. It's like they're telling us we just gotta keep on acting normal, and it's like at least 3,000 people have died for this shit. Between all the accidents, and those are just the ones that are accounted for. I listened solemnly, feeling the high begin to creep behind my eyes, both peaceful relief and a terrible dread. Everything Wink said, I agreed with, but saying the words out loud felt too real, like a curse or a condemnation. You see the shit in the news? Trump posted an AI meme on the White House Twitter comparing deportations to all our shit disappearing. The one from 1 week ago? Yeah, that one. I grimaced at the recollection. And yeah, I saw it. But what's that feel like to you, Jane? I took a second to reconsider my response. Well, I don't know how it feels. It's tactless, manipulative. I guess there's bigger conversation to be had about objectively non-political topics being twisted to further agendas. These are things that affect everyone. Like, I mean, it's like you said, our shit is just vanishing. I know less stuff in the world should make it all feel lighter, but I mean, it's just so suffocating. Wings finished my thought. Yeah, like this issue is just another one to add to the list, he said. Yeah. The silence was deafening. For a moment, all I could hear was from his end was static breathing. Why are we just carrying on? He finally grumbled, his words shaky and uncertain. 3,000 people are dead, and we're just going on. Don't we care? I don't know. I'm scared, Gene. What happens next? I don't know. He went quiet for a moment. I think he was crying. Sorry, Jane. It's okay, Wings. It's really scary and weird, but at least we have each other, right? Yeah, damn. Who knew the end of the world would start with a blue dog tuxedo, huh? A smile. I think that's the first genuine smile of the night. Winks has always been a little melodramatic, but a small part of me definitely echoed the sentiment. I don't think it's the end of the world, Winks. We both sat in silence. By then, I could feel the peaceful euphoria like a physical fog inside my skull. No, but sorry for the rambling, genuinely, he said, this time more collected. Like I said, man, you're fine. We gotta get it out sometimes. It's just so invalidating. I don't want another SNL skit about this shit, damn it. I want the big brains to pause everything for a moment and figure it out. Yeah. As I got comfy in bed and turned off my morning alarm, I saw Winks had sent me a video call request.
Sorry, I was wondering if we could video call tonight. Stay on call? Oh, shit, yeah, I mean, that's fine with me, I said with a smirk. I haven't done this since we were high school freshmen. Winks grinned, an embarrassed blush creeping over his pale cheeks. I know, I just want to make sure that, well, call me paranoid. I'd be lying if I said I didn't harbor the same paranoia. Yeah, Winks, you're good. Have a good night and sweet dreams. You too, Jeannie. Soon as my consciousness drifted away, I found myself climbing up what I initially assumed was a volcano. With ash drifting into its opening, Sarah stood on the grass at the edge of the void. As I got closer, I realized the lack of lava or sulfur. The crater was inconceivable due to the sheer size. The whole thing couldn't even fit within my field of vision. The whole thing looked like a magnificent being had punched a perfectly square hole down into a mountain. Sarah was wearing her iconic early 2000s goth attire. Intricate black chains and hooks dangled from her extensions, dark overlaying fabrics and fishnets juxtaposed against her pink skin and blonde hair. She held a stuffed Hello Kitty toy tightly to her chest, like it was a lifeline. I stepped up to get a better look down into the pit. The inside of millions and millions of rooms lined the walls, as if a massive expanse of apartments were encased with the mountain. In the middle of this megalophobe's nightmare was a huge rippling mass of something gray. As the wind tore at my clothes and stung my skin, I could tell that the giant gray tumor was moving, swaying from side to side, but I couldn't tell that if that was from the external or internal forces. Then Sarah dropped the doll she was gripping. By the time I'd registered that she'd let go of it, it was at least 20 stories behind us. Gone as gone it could be. As my eyes followed the pink toy's fluttery descent, I realized what the gray thing was. Stuff. Loads and loads and loads of stuff, flakes of what I had earlier thought to be ash were actually faraway pieces of detritus falling from the sky and drifting into the hole to add onto the lump. It was so massive I could barely make out everything in the distance. Sure enough, there was a car, a door, a garage, a wood chipper, a tank, several dumpsters. They all just fell down, 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 down onto the ever-growing pile, ever-throbbing pile. I stumbled away from the edge. I looked at Sarah, who was now watching me, tears streaming from her eyes. Her lip quivered. The expression on her face was somewhere between repressed shame and indignant rage. I tried to speak to her, but the wind blew my voice away, drowning me. You left me. When she spoke, it was the only thing in the world. Her voice filled my ears, and she was all I could hear. You left me, and now we're stuck. I tried to cry out, to apologize, but alas, I could not. Why did you forget? Why? All I could do was watch in horror. As the corner of something sharp poked out from under her eyelid, she blinked, seemingly confused by the interruption, and it jutted out further. She reached up and tenderly touched her eyelid. She traced the edge of the thing under her skin, and when her fingers found purchase, she pulled. With sickening she pulled out an ace of hearts from under her eyelid and around her eyeball. The once wide card was now pink, dripping with something viscous. Sarah blinked again. Multiple other bits and points nudged themselves out from under both her eyes' puffy, irritated lids. She began frantically scratching her eyes with her nails, digging and pulling whatever she could. Her soft eyelids began to shred into wet, red strips of skin. The fluid from inside her eyes began to leak and mix with the blood and spinal fluid. The cards that shot out of her eyes got progressively bloodier and bloodier. Her cheeks and the tissue around her eye sockets began to blister and bulge with every yank. Her throat began to swell up too, a violent, lumpy shade just below the surface that threatened to burst her neck open like a sadistic balloon. Then, with one final burst of desperate energy, she just yanked on whatever she could with her fingers, tissue and cards alike. With the force of an amped-up automated card shuffler, a wave of small paper razors shot out of her ruined eye sockets and mouth, all at once, landing in heaps at her feet while blood and viscera spurted from her orifices. With a final strangled wheeze, Sarah lost her footing and fell backwards, over the edge, and into the pit. I woke up with a jump, pulse racing. I felt like I had just run a marathon, drenched in sweat. I smelled like an anxious onion. I sat up, tears in my eyes. It'd been such a long time since I've had a nightmare like that. Holy shit, Winks! I just had the worst sleep, I said, yawning and rubbing my eyes as I looked at my phone. Something happened. Winks. A fresh wave of panic rushed into my throat, feeling like suffocating bile. The ethereal sun streamed through the blinds, and birds chirped outside. I could see clearly what was wrong. Winks was nowhere to be seen. Holy. Wow. That was a really impressive story. Definitely by this user. For the better good. Definitely go and check them out on Reddit. This is some really excellent work.
I'd just like to chat a little bit about the story that we read because I think it's really, really, really special. And yeah, again, for the better good, definitely go check them out. Um, in all honesty, this story feels really profound and it feels like it comes from a very deep place of meaning. In all honesty, I'm not quite sure what to make of it. It feels kind of liminal. Like, for those who watched Kane Pixel's Backrooms, it definitely feels very ponderous, and there are sprinkles of real, deeper meaning within there. The conversations to be had about political leaders, the spreading of media, the schizo posting, and all just traits that I think we interact with every now and then in daily life, and how they could be weaponized when something near apocalyptic happens. It's crazy to think about. Definitely, it makes you really think that, like, what if something is so mundane as, like, just normal occurrence that you would figure is something normal that happens to everyone? It slowly starts getting out of hand and eventually becomes a worldwide panic. And then it starts affecting those around you, and then the scale just keeps growing and growing and growing. And for sure, there's a metaphor to be had, especially the symbolism at the end with the pile of ever growing stuff and the Hello Kitty doll that fell into it. Definitely, if anyone would like to read this and go over it and come up with their own thoughts, I would definitely recommend it. Anyway, it seems like our laddering's taken a bit longer than expected, so I'm gonna read the second story that we have here, still on r/scary stories by user outrageous humor 624. The title is My Fiancée Stopped Sleeping After We Moved into Our House in the Appalachian Mountains. I wish I had listened to her. My name is Alex, and I lived in the Appalachian Mountains my entire life. If you grow up here, you learn the difference between being scared and being cautious. I've heard coyotes that sounded like screaming women, foxes that can make your blood run cold, and black bears wandering through yards in the middle of the night. There's almost always a reasonable explanation. About 3 months ago, my fiance and I bought a small house deep in the mountains. The nearest town is about 20 minutes away, and our closest neighbor is over a mile down the road. We wanted the quiet. We wanted to be left alone. For the first week, everything was perfect. Then she stopped sleeping. Every morning, she'd tell me she'd heard something walking around the house. Not random noises. Slow footsteps that circled the porch and stopped outside our bedroom window. I'd tell her it was a deer or a bear. She always shook her head. Their footsteps, she'd say. Two legs. I'd laugh it off. I'd spent my entire life in these woods. I figured she just wasn't used to how loud the mountains could be at night. For almost 2 weeks, the same conversation happened every morning. She'd look exhausted. I'd tell her it was wildlife. Eventually, she stopped arguing with me. Then one night, I woke up on my own. She was already sitting upright in bed, staring at the window. Without looking at me, she whispered, "Do you hear it?" At first, nothing. Then, crunch, crunch, slow footsteps outside. Not pacing, walking with purpose. I listened, waiting to hear 4 feet moving through leaves like a deer or a bear. Instead, the sound stopped directly beneath our bedroom window. Then came something that makes me still uncomfortable to think about. Whispering. I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like several people quietly talking over each other, just slow enough that my brain kept trying to understand what they were saying. It wasn't coming from the woods. It sounded like it was right outside the class. My fiancée grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. I told you. I got out of bed, unlocked my gun safe, and grabbed my hunting rifle. I honestly expected us to walk outside and find a beer standing against the house, or maybe something messing with us. I stepped onto the porch with a flashlight in one hand and a rifle in the other. The yard was empty. I swept the light across the tree line. Then I saw it. Standing just inside the woods, maybe 30 yards away, was something I still can't explain. It was unnaturally tall, pale enough that the flashlight caught it immediately. Thin, almost impossibly so, with long arms hanging at its sides. It wasn't hiding behind a tree. It was standing completely still, looking at me. I don't remember seeing eyes. I don't remember seeing a mouth. I just remember knowing it was looking directly at me. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then it leaned forward slightly, not like it was getting ready to run, more like it was curious. I fired. The rifle echoed through the valley. The thing turned and disappeared into the trees faster than anything I've ever seen. It didn't crash through the brush or snap branches. One second it was there, the next it wasn't. The sheriff came the next morning. He searched the property, checked the woods, and eventually told me it was probably a bear or someone trespassing. There were no tracks, no blood, no signs that anything had been there at all. My family doesn't believe us. Most of our friends don't either. The truth is, some days I don't know what to believe. Maybe my fiance's lack of sleep had gotten into my head. Maybe I saw something ordinary and my brain turned it into something else. We moved out 11 days later. For months afterward, neither of us talked about it. Then, while unpacking boxes in our new house, my fiancée found an old phone she'd used when we first moved into the mountains. She was scrolling through old pictures when she suddenly froze. Alex. I looked over, and she'd gone completely pale. She handed me the phone without saying another word. The photo had been taken almost a week before the night I saw the thing. It was an ordinary picture of her backyard at sunset. She'd sent it to her sister to show how isolated the house was. At first, I didn't understand what she was trying to show me. Then she zoomed in on the tree line. Standing between two trees was a tall, pale figure. The same shape, the same impossibly thin body, the same place I'd seen it that night. Neither of us had noticed it when the picture was taken. I've stared at the photo more times than I can count. What bothers me isn't that it's there, it's what happened after I looked closer. The figure wasn't facing our house, it was facing deeper into the woods, like it had been watching something else. I didn't know what scared me more. The idea that it had been here long before we noticed it, or the possibility that whatever it was watching eventually left the woods and came to our window. I truly felt like the sheriff knew more than what he said. Wow, that certainly caught me off guard. Honestly, I don't know what's scarier, the fact that this tale is so short, or the fact that, like, I kind of want more of it. Definitely feels like it's leading up to something, but at the same time, it could definitely work as a standalone story. I love the feeling of dread as the story continues on. I guess the fear of the unknown, not knowing quite what it is, that uncanny valley feeling because it's not quite human, but just close enough. Definitely really stirs an atmosphere of fear. Lovely work by this user, Outrageous Humor 624. Now, I seriously thought that I'd only read two stories, but It seems like, honestly, I think I just want to reach 3K ladder, 1.3K ladder, and then call it a day because I checked the bottom of ladder is somewhere around 1.5, so we'll just play a couple more matches and then call it a day. Our last story for the day is from r/scary stories again by Quiet Vanilla 5414. The title is The Noises from 4B Started Small. Now they're coming for me. I moved into a small apartment, Unit 3B, in an old building in northern Brooklyn, New York. After losing my job in the city, I had to find a place that was cheap, a place that fit my budget, which was completely empty. This building was just like the ones you'd see in old movies, its walls cracked and saturated with the smell of moisture and grease accumulated over the years. Its elevators were old, screaming and swaying as if they were going to collapse at any moment. I noticed that the neighbors tried to be friendly. On my first day, while leaving my apartment in the morning, I met Miss Evelyn, who lived in the unit across the hall. Evelyn is in her 50s, working long shifts at a nearby supermarket. She said to me with a tired smile etched with wrinkles, "Hello, my son. Welcome to your new home." The neighbor in 4B, Mr. Harrison, is a very quiet man. He has lived here alone for over 10 years. We only see him when he goes out to buy his food or take out the trash. He lives completely alone. No visitors, no family, not even friends. Then she let out a light laugh and said the man was just an eccentric, harmless soul. The conversation seemed normal on the surface. On the third night, as I lay in the cheap bed I'd brought from a second-hand store, trying to sleep after a long, exhausting day, I heard dozens of voices coming from the Harrison apartment, directly next to mine. Muffled laughter and fast, overlapping whispers. The sound of a woman crying softly, then suddenly choking, and the voice of a man singing an old song in a trembling tone, as if he were trying to hide his pain. I jumped off the bed, my heart pounding at a high rate. I paced the room for a few fleeting seconds, then pressed my ear against the cold wall. The sounds were terrifyingly real, not from a television or radio, because they were changing and overlapping, as if many people were sitting in one room, talking under pressure. In the morning, I asked Evelyn about these sounds. She told me with the same confidence. "Harrison, my dear, lives alone. I've known him for many long years. He has no wife and no children." Then she gave me an uncertain smile, and I felt that something was completely wrong, and this would be the beginning of the end. I continued to hear the sounds for several days. I couldn't sleep more than 2 hours a night, and the lack of sleep caused me to lose focus. I tried to convince myself that they were hallucinations due to stress, and because I wasn't used to the new place. But every night the sounds would return, stronger, as I sat alone in the dark. I could hear dozens of souls groaning and bleeding inside the apartment of a man who lives alone, according to the neighbors. The days that followed became unbearable. Every night, at exactly 11 o'clock, the sounds would start again, without exception. Sometimes they were sudden, hysterical laughs, as if people were trying to hide their intense terror. And sometimes muffled screams, as if they were coming from the throats gagged with cloth or hands. I once heard a voice of a man with a clear Latino accent saying, "Please, I have a family. Let me go back home." And then the sound of repeated hits and punches, and after that, a heavy silence that would last for hours. I couldn't explain what was happening, and I was too shy to ask Harrison about these sounds. Also, I refused to invade his privacy or enter his apartment. During the day, Harrison would go out like any normal human being, a man in his late 60s, his hair stark, snowy white, his body was thin and strangely fit. He walked with slow, calculated steps and carried large shopping bags full of canned food tins and water bottles. One day, I stood with him in the elevator. He gave me a cold smile that didn't reach his gray eyes, which were like pieces of ice. He said in a very quiet voice, "The weather is lovely today in Brooklyn." I didn't comment on what he said, but his eyes made me terrified for no apparent reason. I asked the rest of the neighbors one by one. The man from the third floor who works as a taxi driver said Harrison was completely alone. "I see him return alone every time from work at the warehouse," the manager, Mike, the fat man who loves to smoke cheap cigars. He shrugged his shoulders and said, "There are no official complaints." The apartment had been his for years, and his record were clean. If there were loud noises or parties, I would have known and evicted him. But I'm sure I'm not crazy. I started recording the sounds every night on my phone, long hours of whispers, moaning, and fragmented words. In one clear recording, I heard the voice of a little girl saying with a trembling voice, "I'm hungry. Don't hurt me again." Then Harrison's own voice, quiet and cold, as if he were talking about the weather, he said, "If you don't stay quiet, you will be like the others." I decided to go to the police after collecting more than 10 recordings. The officer shook his head and said, "These sounds like they could be from a movie or other neighbors. The man has a completely clean record, and there are no previous reports." I left completely frustrated and returned to the building, thinking about moving out immediately. But fear and a morbid curiosity kept me in the apartment. I started watching Harrison from afar. I noticed that every 2 or 3 days, he would go out with large quantities of medicine, food, ropes, and adhesive tape, and sometimes with heavy black bags. On a rainy, freezing night, I decided to follow him, instead of entering his apartment. I waited until I saw him go down into the elevator, around 1 o'clock in the morning. He had a large, heavy black bag with him. He was wearing a black jacket and a hood over his head. I went down after him quietly to watch him, and I kept a safe distance between us in the rainy street, so he wouldn't feel or notice that I was watching him. The rainwater was falling on my face, and I was shivering from the cold and terror. I followed him for a long distance until he reached an abandoned industrial area. It was close to the waterfront, a place full of old black warehouses and dim lighting. I hid behind a rusty dumpster, and I saw him meet two men in a black van without license plates. They opened the trunk, and I saw large plastic bags that they were throwing into the river, bags stained in certain places with a dark red color. Even in the dark, it was clear that it was blood. I heard their whispered conversations. They said, "The new shipment is ready." The ones in the apartment, "We finished with them today. We moved them before they noticed." One of them let out a low laugh and said, "Harrison, you do clean work." Through their conversation, I understood that the apartment was just a temporary stop in a large network of kidnapping, extortion, and illegal trafficking. They bring people at night to interrogate them or torture them, then move them or get rid of them, and the neighbors were all either afraid or uninterested, or part of the general silence. I ran back to the building, wet and terrified. I called the police from my phone and described everything. They arrived an hour later. When they reached the apartment, they found it completely clean. Harrison was sitting there drinking coffee, and he said calmly, This neighbor of mine, he imagines things. I live alone, just like everyone says." The officer suspected me and said that the stalking was illegal, and there was no material evidence. From that day on, I started noticing small changes in my apartment. Sometimes my belongings would move from their place. Silent phone calls in the middle of the night, and the sound of light footsteps in the hallway in front of my door. The neighbors started avoiding me. Evelyn doesn't respond when I say hello. I became frustrated, and I felt that the police and my neighbors were complicit with Harrison. I decided to leave everything as it is. I'm now sitting in the dark, the door is locked, and the weapon is by my side. Harrison will return tonight, and this network is bigger than me, and bigger than the local police. if everyone is reading this, don't move into a quiet building in Brooklyn. And if you hear sounds from the neighbor's apartment, don't say anything. I won't be able to escape, and the coming morning might not come for me. Really impressive story by Quiet Vanilla 5414. Definitely go check them out if you like this. I feel like it was a bit difficult to read, especially because of the large amount of ellipses through the story, but it was definitely really interesting. I would just like to comment that our protagonist here has a decent survival instinct, but at the same time, one could describe him as a little bit, I don't know, asking for the danger. Like, if you see something like that and you describe your need to stay as just curiosity, you're not obligated to stay. Just leave. Genuinely, just leave. It's not worth it. It's not worth your safety. Definitely an open-ended ending over there. I feel like this could go either way, but we might not hear from him again. I gotta say that, at least. Well, for what it's worth, I think that's gonna be our last story for the day. I'd just like to briefly comment on the teams that I'm using, the showdown laddering and such. I'm not a professional Pokemon player by any means, but I just figured that it's a rather consistent team that I've used in testing, and I feel that I do have a chance at reaching high ladder. So, for what it's worth, I think this will be a fun journey to stick around and watch. And if anybody has any requests for me to use a specific team or play a specific meta, I have plans on doing UU and maybe NU or RU or doubles OU or even playing champions one of the days. Definitely. And the goal is to reach ladder on all of them. And yeah, so if anybody has any requests on what metas I should do, or specific teams that I should use, specific Pokemon that I can use, definitely I'm willing to try, give it an attempt, and yeah, I'll be here. Although, I do gotta say that the stall team, the full stall team that I faced earlier really threw me for a swirl. Clearly, this team has some issues, as I wrote down earlier while I was reading the story. Medicham certainly might be a problem for me, especially because Thick Fat Venusaur is not built to take a Z headbutt, and then close combat deals more than half to Dodozo. So in the end, it's probably Corviknight that's the only counter that I have for it, and if Corviknight dies, I'm pretty cooked. I mean, yes, I do outspeed it with both of my wall breakers, but other than that, I don't really have a way to deal with Medicham. And then full stall. Definitely I played very badly against that team, I must say. And yeah, I was hoping to get like maybe a full win streak without losing a single match, but gotta keep our hopes realistic for this. Yeah, I definitely ran into some really cool teams on ladder today. There's a grass type gym leader, and then the aforementioned stall team, and then a couple of monotype teams. I definitely know that the higher up in ladder we go, we'll be facing a lot of the same teams, specifically with Tapu Lele and Landorus and such and such. But I believe that. I believe in this team. One might even say I have faith in the power of my Pokemon or something. I don't know. Anyways, I'll just be rounding this up and playing some chill music in the background while we finish up the fights, and then I'll see you guys in the next video.